Welcome back, and if you're new here, get ready to stay. This is the Thrive in Life and Faith podcast, designed to help you do just that. With your hosts Litha and Remo, making space for people to share their thoughts and experiences to help you thrive in life and faith.
Yo, what's up, everybody? We're back with another episode of the Thrive in Life and Faith podcast. I've got to get used to saying the name. Um, I am not alone. Again, I am with the founder of the podcast, the perfecter, the finisher, the guy who turned this idea into reality, like a legend, a hero, a man after God's own heart, Sir Remo Tlale. What's up, bro?
Shout out, shout out for the sir. Um, I didn't know that you could be a founder of a podcast. That's
Yeah,
quite a,
man.
I might put that
This
on
is
my CV. That sounds like a
your
pretty,
brainchild, bro.
this sounds like a pretty formal title. But cool. Good to be here. What's up, dude?
Yeah, man. How's it going? How's the day going? How's life, man?
Yo, it's long, bro.
Fair
It's long.
enough.
I feel like the days are full and life is busy and there's a lot of intricacies that I'm trying to figure out on a number of different fronts. So my brain feels like it's constantly working.
Yeah.
But I will say this week, I got time with two really good friends.
Mhm.
And I'm getting time in the coming days with two other really good friends. And so I feel like uh, there's something really cool about just having really cool, deep friendships. So
Yeah.
they are helping to carry the bond, carry the load, yeah.
Keeps us going in these
Yes, sir. What about you?
I'm good as well. It's been a long week, but that's just life these days. But we keep moving. It's good to be back on the podcast, being consistent. Yeah, I can't really complain. I mean, life is just life.
That's cool. You know what you can celebrate is
What?
I don't know if she'd want us to even talk about that. Oh, now I've got myself into trouble. Let me not say anything. What I can talk about is, have you seen that meme of the guy who runs, who's like, I knew it. It's gonna
Yeah,
hurt. Yeah.
yeah,
I probably
yeah.
quote that guy three times, at least three times a day.
No, he's also a go-to for me. So
So good to know we're on the same page. But let's jump in, dude. Let's hit. We are what are we doing? Matthew chapter 5, continuing the Sermon on the Mount, and we're gonna dive into verses 13 to 16. Do you want me to
yeah,
read all the way through, or should I read the first one and pause and then do the next one?
you can read all the way through just to like contextualize us, and then we'll break it through. If you missed last week, we went through the Beatitudes. We didn't go through all of them,
Yes,
um,
it's true.
because we don't really have the time to do that. Went through the first three Beatitudes to see how like Jesus kicks off the Sermon on the Mount. And what Rima and I really want to do is like obviously Sermon on the Mount is like ancient teachings, and they can just become sayings.
Yes,
But Jesus is actually like preaching a way of life. And so we're trying to see like what he's saying, how it applied then, but also how it can apply now,
shapes, yeah.
and like the kind of reality that we can live out that Jesus seems to think that we are all more than capable of living out.
Yes, sir.
So
Sweet. Thank you for that. That's a good framing. Okay, so Matthew chapter 5, verse 13. I'm reading out of the ESV. It
yeah,
says, You are the salt of the earth. But if salt has lost its taste, how shall its saltiness be restored? It is no longer good for anything except to be thrown out and trampled under people's feet. You are the light of the world. A city on a hill cannot be hidden. Nor do people light a lamp and put it under a basket, but on a stand, and it gives light to all in the house. In the same way, let your light shine before others, so that they may see your good deeds and give glory to your Father who is in heaven.
yeah. So this is four verses, but it's packed with like
Oh,
meaning.
dude.
It's
Yes.
this
Full,
is classic Jesus here.
full disclosure for the
Um,
people listening, Lita wanted us to do all the way to verse 20
yeah,
because
I realized
he's that
as this
kind of
guy read
biblical scholar. So
I
for the
realized
rest
that
of us, I
Remo
said,
read,
no,
we'll
sir.
sit here for 3 hours.
Yeah, I said,
Try to
no,
go
no, no,
person to
no, no.
person.
No, it
Um,
is. It's dense. It's dense, but it's what I will say, and this is what I appreciate about the Sermon on the Mount, and certainly Jesus' teaching style is the ability to evoke really powerful imagery to make really deep resonating points.
yeah.
So that's my 2 cents on
Um,
that. Yeah, that's where we
I
gonna
mean,
go.
we'll go verse by verse just to make it a little bit easier to digest. So verse 13, he starts there, NIV, you're the salt of the earth, but if the salt loses its saltiness, how can it be made salty again? It is no longer good for anything except to be thrown out and trampled underfoot. And so obviously our first reference is why is Jesus looking at a crowd of people and telling them that they're salt? And so there's a lot of like history behind that. This is actually like his first sort of teaching because he
Okay.
kicks off the sermon with just blessings.
Hmm.
And so, blessed is that person, blessed is that person. And like we discussed last week, you can't become those things. Like, those are just where you are
Hmm.
in your life and the group of people that he's talking to. And it's important to always keep in mind the group of people that he's talking to. And you'll find that at the end of Matthew chapter 4. Anyway, he comes here, you're the salt of the earth. And I think there's a lot of symbolism behind salt.
Hmm.
And so we've obviously got to think about what salt does. And in a biblical sense, salt was like this preserver and this purifier of food. It preserves the taste in food. It preserves like the quality in food. So you put salt in and it keeps it going for a couple of more days than if there wasn't any salt. But also, really interestingly, salt was actually like an important component of a lot of the sacrifices in the Old Testament.
Mm.
And so you would put that animal on this altar and then you would put salt on it as a sort of like purifier to
Mm.
symbolize the purity between yourself and the God that you are trying to invite into your life.
Sure.
And so he looks at these people and he essentially tells them that these guys are a representation of the purity of the relationship with God.
Mm.
Because he says you are.
Yeah.
Not you can be, you will be, you are the salt of the earth.
Mm.
And so obviously that takes us back to the Old Testament because he's talking to a group of Israelites and how God like picked a family that would then give his blessing to the nations.
Yeah.
And so now we've got a group of Israelites here who are the salt of the earth, hence the earth, not
Hmm.
just like that group, like of the entire earth.
Yeah.
And they are the preservers of the relationship with God, humanity's relationship with God. But then he says, but if the salt loses its saltiness, how can it be made salty again?
Mm.
And so I guess that gets me thinking, actually, before I jump forward, I know I've said a lot. Is there anything you want to add there?
Yeah, I think one of the cool things about the role of salt in the ancient world, certainly it's still true today, is also flavor.
Yeah,
And oftentimes you even mentioned kind of this retention and purifying side
yeah.
of the salt. But I like the idea that it's also flavor. It's also what brings,
Hmm.
I don't know, I don't know how else to describe that
Yeah,
into the world. That as he's
yeah,
talking to these people, you add flavor, you bring about. Uh, I always think about it from a meat perspective. Meat without salt, even for a person like me who
yeah,
does not enjoy salt, is really bad. But a little
yeah.
bit of salt goes a long way in drawing that meat's best qualities out. Maybe is the best way to put it. And I think there is something really cool about being told that you are meant to bring out the best qualities of humanity across the globe, out and into the open. So I think
Because it's
that's
interesting what you said, that flavor part as well. Because often when you eat food,
Mhm.
you immediately know when there is no salt. It's
Yes,
like this indicator that something is lacking.
yes, yeah,
And so he looks at these people, right? And like the thing that's lacking in the world is God.
mm,
It's in that context. And you guys are the guys who are going to bring him into the world.
mm,
You are. The thing that's lacking will be shown to the world through you.
yeah,
Again, these guys are like broke, destitute, bottom of the barrel in their society.
mm,
But Jesus looks at them and says, God is going to enter the world through you.
Yeah. Yeah.
But then he goes,
And
but if the salt loses,
sorry.
hey, sorry,
Sorry,
go ahead.
before we move on. What's also interesting is I did some research on the
Yeah.
text. Um, some scholars, and I don't, this just was interesting to me, so I thought I'd throw it out there. Some scholars say it
Mhm.
was actually a rabbinic device or picture to use salt as the symbol for wisdom. So
Mhm.
as you're gonna go into losing its saltiness, it's the idea that if one loses wisdom, then it becomes foolish, right? Because what use is salt that is not salty?
Yeah.
And so it's quite a cool. I thought that was also quite a cool picture for this group of people who perhaps would have been familiar with uh,
With the,
the
yeah,
rabbinic picture that rabbis apparently of the day, again, depending on who you read. Um, but I thought that's a cool insight that perhaps he is also evoking in them the image that they've always had, taught to them that part of what you do,
yeah,
yes, you give flavor, yes, you preserve, but you do that by carrying this wisdom, this way of living that comes from God, right? And that's often, if you read particularly Proverbs, that's what wisdom is all about. About a way of being that is in view of who God is and what He wants in the world. So I thought that's quite a striking picture as well. That's quite cool.
yeah. Um, and it's so interesting because he evokes that image, and I think this is his way of taking it a step further, where he goes, but if the salt loses its saltiness, how can it be made salty again?
Mhm.
It is no longer good for anything except to be thrown out and trampled underfoot.
Yeah.
And which is interesting. I initially always used to think of this like a threat. Like, yo, you better stay salty and stay preserving like the covenant with God, or like that's it for you.
Sure.
Um, which I think I've grown out a bit of. When we look at it and we spoke about the qualities of salt and how it becomes this preserving factor, but when salt is no longer like able to be used what it's used for, I think that trampled underfoot, it's again a vivid image where they used to like throw salt out into the walkways so
Mm.
that like the paths would not be slippery anymore
Yeah.
because the salt would be the thing that would create that solid ground that you needed to be used, but it wasn't being used for what it's used for.
Mm.
So it was no longer like this thing that added flavor. It was no longer this thing, this preservative. It was no longer this purifier.
Yeah.
It was just like useful, I guess, but not for its purpose.
Mm.
And I think maybe that is what Jesus is pushing these people towards, that they are actually this picture and this pointer to something great.
Yeah.
But when they lose sight of that through their experiences in their lives or through how they've been treated, they no longer point to what they were meant to point to.
Mm.
And that's not to say they're not like valuable or worthy anymore, but like they're not fulfilled. They're not
Yeah.
whole
Yeah.
because they are no longer like this symbol of this relationship with a God who loves them and wants to enter the world through them.
Mm.
They instead just live, I guess, like just the average human experience, like
Yeah.
where there's something lacking, where like the food without the salt. It's
Sure.
edible, but it's not the best that it could be
Yeah.
because of what's missing.
Mm.
Um, and in this case, what's missing is God. I think that Jesus is pointing people to God. And so you're not, which has always been interesting, you're not just going to make yourself salty,
Yeah.
which I thought is
Yeah.
something that we can easily fall into the pattern of it being something that we have to do.
Yes.
So we have to be like, we have to make ourselves, it's the Beatitudes all over again. We have to make ourselves poor in spirit or meek. Sometimes it's just where you are. And
Yeah.
from where you are, God enters through you.
Mm.
But when you are no longer salty or where you lose sight of God, it becomes harder for you to allow God to enter through you or to be a person who points towards God because he's no longer a relationship that you want or are trying to keep.
Yeah.
And again, I think I've said a lot there. Anything you want to add there?
No, you're cooking. I think that is huge wrestle for the current human. and probably
Yeah.
more specific to the group of people that listen to this podcast, the Christian.
Yeah.
This idea of identity, our place in the world, and what it is that we are meant to carry out, right? Because we have, in a lot of ways, this calling, this picture of who it is that we're supposed to be. Um, and yet, I know for many a Christian, certainly myself as well, we don't always know how that translates to every moment of every day.
Mm,
And it's easy to end up being the type of human being who's just having, like you said, a meager human experience and not
yeah.
truly bearing his image and expanding his garden and bringing about his kingdom here on earth as it is in heaven, flavoring the world, preserving all that is good, um, and kind of living in wisdom. And so I
Yeah.
wonder, maybe it's just my own personal journey on this one, but I wonder um, how much we would gain by reorienting ourselves. The cool biblical word is to repent, to
Yeah.
a facing of God, because that is the only way that, like you said, that's the only way that some level of saltiness will be reestablished in ourselves, as opposed for this more modern grappling of, oh, this is your purpose, brother, live in your purpose, sister, type of
Yeah.
theology. So I don't know if I've added any value there, but that's what I'm contemplating
Uh,
as we speak.
yeah. And again, it takes us back to last week because I think the way Matthew, the author Matthew, has set it up is very intentional because he talks about, he first starts with people being blessed, as
Mm,
in God has like extended his presence towards them.
yes,
And I think the way you describe the modern Christian, there's a lot of like we try to invoke God's blessing in our lives. And
yes,
so we try through our actions to like bring God in through our good works, through whatever it is that we can do, how many things we can get right, how many of the right beliefs we can like cultivate in ourselves. And so we look at salty of the earth and we immediately think, no, this is an active thing that I have to attain.
yes.
But the scripture says you are,
Mm,
not that you must or you will or you can if.
hmm,
It just says that you are the salt of the earth. But then if you lose sight of the fact that God has already extended his presence to you, and
yeah,
that because God has extended his presence to you, he can extend his presence through you to another human being, then you lose your saltiness. And we're back in the spiral of trying to invoke the things that God already wants to give us,
yeah.
which is the usual default human experience.
Hmm.
I hope that makes sense.
It does. It makes a lot of sense. And perhaps as we transition to verse 14, for those who are intrigued by it, it comes up, this same salt, the salt piece comes up in Mark chapter 9, verse 50, and then Luke
Yeah,
chapter 14, verse 34. So Mark 9:50 and Luke 13:34. I just thought as I was prepping for this that would be cool to help people see that question mark we
yeah,
put out there last week. Is it one sermon? Is it multiple sermons? Is it one sermon in different parts across different, whatever. You put it how you want it, but that's where it appears elsewhere in the text. So then, Mr. Reverend Doctor, the you are statement of you are the salt of the earth and then you are the lights of the world, is that both and? Is it you are one or the other? Or are these images that are both meant to kind of evoke a picture and then a reaction from the audience?
yeah. And so they're both connected. And so
Okay.
salt and light are huge biblical images. Like you said, rabbis would have taught these to their
Hmm.
students.
Hmm.
Salt of the earth, again, remember like the salt and the sacrifice is the preserving of the covenant relationship with God
Yeah.
and how you preserve that image of God and how you bring it out into the world. You are the light of the world. A town built on a hill cannot be hidden. And then he goes again, neither do people put light, neither do people light a lamp and put it under a bowl. Instead, they put it on its stand and it gives light to everyone in the house,
Hmm.
which again is important. There's a bit of a word play going on there in the original languages. I think um, light in Hebrew is Yara, I think.
Okay.
And then, but also the God's instruction, the word, the Torah, would
Hmm.
often be called the light.
Yeah.
And so you've got Torah, Yara. And so that's what's happening there. And so often, because Torah just means Torah, the Old Testament, it just means God's wisdom or God's instruction.
Mm-hmm.
And so how God's wisdom and God's instruction is often painted is it's a light to the world.
Yeah.
And so obviously Jesus, and we'll touch on it in the next episode, but Jesus is like the wisdom of God made human.
Hmm.
And so now he is looking at this group of people and he's saying, you are the light of the world, as in you are the people who point to God's wisdom.
Yeah. Is that,
Um, Go ahead.
sorry, I was going to ask, is that a little bit like that really cool saying? I don't know who it's attributed to. That says, preach the gospel everywhere you go, and where necessary, use words.
Yeah, so it's stuff like that comes from there, those sayings where it's like
Interesting.
because we often, and again we've had this chat before, but we limit God's word to just the Bible, the text that we have in our hands.
Hmm.
But obviously the Bible can't really always be talking about itself. And so when
True.
the authors are thinking about God's instruction and God's wisdom, they're taking us all the way back to like Genesis 1, where it's like in the beginning God and he said, let there be light.
Mm,
And so it's like God himself shining through into the world, forming and shaping the world. And that is what God's instruction is supposed to do as well.
yes.
It is all part of God's plan I mean, to image the world after himself, to share his existence with all of creation.
Yeah. And I
And
guess,
so when we look at, yeah,
no, sorry, I cut you off, my bad. But I was just going to say, and I guess we then are those little light posts, right? That
yeah,
those image bearers that walk around continuing that original purpose from Genesis 1 to bear his image, to carry his light into the world. And perhaps at some point, the collective compilation of us is kind of even more powerful, right? That we can give,
yeah.
I think it
And that's the
says
thing,
there,
because
to
if,
the whole world so that others can see,
yeah, because if God, Genesis 1, right, shines into the darkness, then as his image, we're the people who do the same, right? We can be like him and we can shine into the darkness as well.
Mm. Hmm.
And so Jesus says, neither do people. So you can't be light and then hide it. Like who turns a lamp on and then immediately puts the bowl on top of it.
Yeah.
And so it takes us back to the salt losing its saltiness, right? This idea
Yes.
of instead of like shining God's will and desires into the world and his life, we shine our own will and our own desires. And for a lack of a better word, our own death into the world.
Yeah.
And so instead of like shining into the darkness, we kind of embrace the darkness and we invite the
Mm.
darkness into ourselves instead of being the light that shines into the darkness.
Yeah.
And so then he says, there's this part there where he says, and it gives light to everyone in the house. And again, that's a callback to what Israel was meant to be, right? Where they were supposed to shine God's instruction to the nations.
Mm.
Like through Israel, the rest of the world would see the name of the Lord. And so then if we are to enter into that relationship with Jesus and be the image of God, because Jesus is the human that we're meant to be, but like we fail to be,
Yeah.
as in we join with him and people see God in us.
Yeah.
And I think that takes us there to the very end where it says, in the same way, let your light shine before others that they may see your good deeds. And then this is the really interesting part, and glorify your Father in heaven,
Yeah. And this
which
this sorry,
go
I'm
ahead.
excited. No, you go, you go, you go.
I think that that last point is really crucial
Mm.
because again, it takes us all the way back to the verse 13 where you are the salt of the earth, but if the salt loses its saltiness, we do
Mm.
our good deeds so that we can be glorified. I think somewhere in John with a different teaching, but he says where John is like making this comment and he says they sought the glory of man instead of seeking the glory of the Lord.
Mm.
And so somewhere along the way, because glory really is about like significance and reputation,
Yeah.
It becomes our own chase for significance and reputation instead of us being the light of God and pointing to his significance and his reputation, because that is the only thing that is significant anyway. And
Yes.
then in our attempts to seek our own glory, we end up losing our saltiness, we end up embracing the darkness, we end up becoming the light of the world that's hidden.
Mm.
Yeah. Or you.
Yeah. No, this is the challenge for me with the modern Christian.
Yeah.
And we're going to get there. So I don't want to get ahead of us. But he has some strong words for people who do things so people can see them.
Yeah. Yes, he
Right.
does.
But it's interesting. I think again, very minor research because I trust you are the biblical scholar on this podcast. Um, but I found it quite interesting the difference in orientation.
Yeah.
That there is a difference between being oriented towards deliberate pursuit of my own prestige, my own glory, my own
Mhm.
fame, my own awesomeness, versus
Mhm.
let them be there. Let these good things you do be present and public enough that they will glorify your Father who is in heaven.
Yeah.
Right. And I think it's Peter who writes this as well about the witness of the Christian needs to be so countercultural that it leaves people thinking there must be a God. And that's a total
Yeah.
Remo paraphrase of Peter's idea. But I think the work it out salvation, the
Mm.
and again there's these some of these things are so frustrating because there's actually words for this in the text. And so you say something like that, and people are like, but Philippians says, work out your salvation with fear and trembling.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. But I'm saying I've got to prove, I've got to work towards, I'm got to shine my light, I've got to make my light burn. How do I make my light burn? That is not the call,
Yeah.
right? To me, the exciting yet incredibly challenging part, and I had a great conversation with a good friend this week, and he was saying, I'm scared. Like I actually have, if I genuinely follow Jesus the way that I seem to see the text calling me to follow him, I'm scared of what on earth my life will look like. Right. But
Yeah.
but but I think that's a person who's wrestling with, I don't want the good deeds for myself, and I don't want the good deeds for them. I want the good deeds for his glory. Right. And I wonder if that would not be more of our faith journeys, that it would be more scary to live out
Yeah.
what it is that Christ calls us to, if we embrace the idea that these decisions, this way of being, this character that I've developed is going to be so that my Father who is in heaven will be glorified, not great job, Lita, you're a good human.
Yeah.
And I think the last thing I'll say on this contemplation for me is I think that's the thing we have to fight to teach well within the Christian space, the church space, the discipling friendship space is not, hey, work so that I can see your work, but do what you're going to do so God is glorified and I may happen to catch glimpses of that.
Yeah.
And maybe that's just for one other person who listens to this who is involved in ministry, um, in the way I am. I think we're all in ministry, but
Mhm.
but I do think that's such a cool picture from Jesus that if you do the right things, people will look at that and say, there is a God. There is a good God in
Yeah.
heaven. They won't say, and maybe they will, but the,
But
the, the actual honor and glory will go to God. And I think that's a super cool way to participate in God's will, to bring about his kingdom here on earth as it is in heaven. I think it's an amazing opportunity to partner in what it is that he's trying to do.
yeah. I think what you're saying is really because we wanna like I will always say we wanna try and show you what these sermons can mean for us today.
Mm,
Because obviously to that crowd, it was this reminder that they are the light to the nations,
yeah.
as in the rest of the world, that like God is coming into the world through them, and other people will look at them and they will see God, and that has always been God's plan.
Mhm.
And obviously, in our day to day, where we chase our own things and our own desires, and we've got all of these competing interests, we've got to provide for ourselves, we've got to provide for our family. We have to, and the only way we can do that is move up the ranks,
Mm,
and like build your reputation, build your online presence, market yourself. like there's a lot of like self-focused, but it can get tiring and it can get exhausting.
Yeah.
And I think part of that is this loss of the saltiness and the light that we were inherently meant to be.
Yeah.
But what Jesus is saying is that these are not things that you have to work to invoke in yourselves. These are things that you are. You
Yeah.
are light, you are salt, you are appointed to God. Like you're appointed to something bigger than yourself, and you can live your life that way.
Mm.
And sure, it's challenging, and it means that we've got to accept a lot of things that we maybe just don't want to accept and let go of a lot of things that we maybe just don't want to let go of.
Sure.
And again, it's like as the sermon goes on, there's where do not worry about your life, I think is something that he says. That's ridiculous. Do not worry about your life.
Yeah.
That's what he says.
Yeah.
Because and then he goes on and he gives us these like this image of the birds and like the air. Like there's more to life than just yourself. And that
Mm.
is hard to accept. But
Yeah.
it is in accepting that you become the human that you were meant to be.
Sure.
Because then you become this pointer to God who has already extended his presence to you.
Yeah.
Like even in like your lowest moment, you are already blessed. In your lowest moment,
Yes.
you are already salt and you are already light. And so I don't know, I can't explain like why you struggle or why things are going bad or like when those moments come, what you're supposed to do. But again, like last week, blessed are those who mourn, for they will be comforted.
Mm.
Um, but it's this idea that Jesus is inviting you into something that is truly life-giving. And you
Yeah.
can live as though you have that life today. And you can make decisions through that lens. You can treat your relationships through that lens. And you can build a life through that lens.
Yeah.
And I think ultimately the faith is believing that it is worth it. It is worth it to fully embrace the presence of God. Jesus certainly seems to think that it is worth it. He may lose some things along the way, but ultimately I think it is better that than to lose your saltiness and to lose your light.
Mm.
Wow, that was a mouthful.
Well, I'm gonna say that I don't plan to lose you, Mr. Miyataza, because you are certainly the light of the world. And on that deep, on that deep note, you made me break character. I wanted to just leave that and let people think about it. But on that deep note, yeah, sincerely hope that this has helped you to thrive in life and faith. Peace.
Peace.
Thank you for tuning in. Make sure to like, subscribe, and follow on your chosen podcast platform as this continues to help the community grow. With a new episode dropping every few weeks, stay tuned for future insights and discussions that prayerfully continue to help you back yourself, trust God, and thrive in life and faith.